Hi guys, this is Dr. Shruti Kanlapalli, intern from MNR Dental College and Hospital. Today my topic is about anatomy of pulp cavity and clinical guidelines for the access cavity preparation. Before entering into the topic, I just want to share few quotations which has been taken from the Grossman textbook. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single small step, which was given by the Lao Tzu. And the other quotation is, of all the phases of anatomic study in the human system, one of the most complex is the pulp cavity morphology, which was given by the M.T. Barrett. He says that studying the pulp cavity is more complex when compared to that of any other study in the human system. Coming to the introduction, anatomy of the pulp cavity, that we are going to deal with pulp chamber, root canals, lateral canals and accessory foramina, apical foramina, isthmus, and then classification of the root canals which was given by the different scientists, goals of the access cavity preparation, then what are the clinical guidelines which we have to follow for the access cavity preparation. Coming to the anatomy of the pulp cavity. First of all, what is a pulp cavity? It is nothing but the central cavity which is present within the tooth and is entirely enclosed by a dentin, except at the apical foramina. Very important. Here, only at the apical foramina, the central cavity, which is nothing but the pulp, is not enclosed by a dentin, right? Here the pulp cavity has been divided into two portions, coronal portion and radicular portion. Here the coronal portion is called as a pulp chamber and the radicular portion is called as the root canal. Coming to the pulp chamber, here we are going to deal with some of the terms such as roof. Roof of the pulp chamber. It is nothing but dentin covering the pulp chamber occlusally or incisally. Occlusally for the molars and the incisally for the anterior side. Then coming to the pulp horn. It is an accentuation of a roof of the pulp chamber directly under a cusp or developmental lobe. It is nothing but the prolongation of the pulp itself directly under a cusp, means the pulp itself extends under a cusp so as to follow the contour of the tooth. Coming to the floor. Floor is nothing but it runs parallel to the roof and consists of a dentin bonding the pulp chamber near the cervical area, very important, of the tooth, particularly dentin forming the furcation area. Floor of the pulp chamber is nothing but the pulp which is present at the cervical area of the tooth and the furcation area, whereas the roof, it is nothing but the occlusally or incisally. Coming to the canal orifices, these are nothing but the openings which are present in the floor of the pulp chamber leading into the root canals. It is a way, it forms a way to enter into the root canals. See, here is this is a picture of the anterior teeth. Here, from here to here, it is a pulp cavity which has been divided into two portions, pulp chamber and the root canal. This is a roof and this is a pulp horn. See, it extends itself so as to form the contour of the tooth, and this is the apical foramina. The same terminology in the molars. This is a pulp cavity from here to here, pulp chamber and pulp root canal. Coming to the roof of the pulp chamber, this is occlusally, pulp horn, angle, wall of the pulp chamber, floor of the sea. It is near to the furcation area, right? So hence it is called as the floor of the pulp chamber. This, and this is a canal orifice. It forms a way to enter into the root canals. Apical foramina. These two I will deal in the next slide. Coming to the root canals. Root canals is nothing but the portion of the pulp cavity from the canal orifice to the apical foramina. Means from the canal orifice, from the floor of the pulp chamber to the apical foramen. Here, for our convenience, the root canal has been divided into three: coronal third, middle third, and the apical third. See, they are the few curvatures of the roots. A straight canal extending with minimum apical aperture. You can see here only a minimum apical curvature, right? This is the tooth, and this is a gradual curvature, whereas it ends with a straight apical foramina. Here you can see the gradual curvature of the entire canal. Entire canal has been curved. Here you can see in this next image a sharp curvature, right? A sharp curvature only at the apical foramina. These are the different degrees of the curvatures of the tooth. Okay. What success in negotiating a narrow curved canal depends upon the following. For negotiating a narrow curved canal, that too a curved canal, it depends upon the some of the following terms, such as degree of the curvature, how much degree the entire curvature is there. As we saw in the before slides, it may be gradual curvature from starting to the apical foramina only at a sharp, or else only a sharp curvature at the apical foramina. Next, size and constriction of the root canal. Next, size and flexibility of the endodontic instrument blade, whatever the files we use, it depends upon its size and flexibility of the instrument also. And finally, it also depends upon the skill of the operator. Coming to the lateral canals and accessory foramina. What are accessory canals? What are lateral canals? First of all, these are nothing but the lateral branching of the main root, generally occurring in the apical third of the furcation area. First of all, if this is a tooth, right? Hmm? This is a main root, right? Whatever the branching takes place from the main root, these are nothing but the accessory canals and the lateral canals. Whatever the branching takes place at the lateral surface is called as lateral canals, and these near the furcation area are called as the accessory canals. Accessory canals are nothing but the lateral branching which takes place at the furcation area and at the apical third. Okay, near the apical foramina, whereas lateral canals which occurs to the lateral surface of the root. These lateral canals can also be visible on a radiograph. What are accessory foramina? These are nothing but the openings of these lateral canals and the accessory canals. Openings, right? These are called as accessory foramina. Coming to its formation, how these lateral canals and accessory canals are formed. First of all, during the development of a tooth, some of the periodontal vessels has been entrapped in the HERs. HER is nothing but the Hertwig's epithelial root sheet, right, which helps in the formation of the root. Some of the vessels have been entrapped in these HERs, which results in the formation of the lateral canals and the accessory foramina during the calcification. It usually and generally occurs at the apical third of the root, and hence high rate of incidence of its occurrence is seen in this region. These lateral canals may also be seen in the furcation or the trifurcation area, as I said before. Okay. Coming to the apical foramen. This is nothing but the aperture at or near the apex, through which the blood vessels and the nerves of the pulp enter into the pulp cavity. Okay. This is an aperture or a hole, right, near the apex, from where the blood vessels and the nerves enter the tooth. It is usually funnel shaped in the young age, with the outermost side facing wider portion extending outwards, whereas in adult patient it is very narrow. It becomes narrow, whereas in young patient it is funnel shaped and it is filled with the periodontal tissue, whereas in adult it has been filled with the dentin and the cementum. Okay. These two terms of this apical foramen has to be remembered. Such it says that not always the most constricted portion of the root canal. We think that the apical foramina is a constricted portion, but it is not always. Okay, not always located in the center of the root apex. We usually think that the apical foramina is at the center of the root apex, right? It is not always. These 2 points has to be remembered while we perform the access cavity preparation. Okay, the next other point to be remembered is these apical constrictions are always 0.5 to 1 mm away from the root apex, and hence we stop the obturation only here, 1 mm above the 1 mm below the root apex. Okay, in 17 to 46% of cases, this apical foramina coincides with this anatomic apex, where on an average 0.4 to 0.7 mm away from the anatomic apex. Okay, generally it is this apical foramina is 0.4 to 0.7 away from the anatomic apex. I'll show in a picture. This is a pulp, dentin, cementum, right? Apical constriction, apical foramina, and this anatomic apex. Tip of the root is nothing but the anatomical apex, right? Here you can see this is a apical foramina. Apical foramina doesn't coincides with the anatomic apex. In majority of the cases, it is seen like this only. Whereas this apical constriction, you can see it is 0.5 to 1 mm away from the apical foramina. On a clinical note, these 2 points has to be remembered. It says that it is not necessary to shape, clean or fill the root canals up to their anatomic apexes, but rather to the CJ, which usually lies within the canal just short of the apex. See, studies has been recommended that root canal obturation should be end approximately 0.5 to 1 mm short of the anatomic apex as seen in the radiograph. Before proceeding into the access cavity preparation, we generally take a radiograph, right? In that radiograph, we can measure the length of the root, and after measuring the length of the root, we have to minus 0.5 to 1 mm and we have to do the obturation. See? These are the different positions of the opening of the apical foramen. Here the canal is slightly curved and apical foramina is to the lateral surface of the root, right? Here you can see straight, slightly curved, and it is slightly short of the apex, right? This is the anatomic apex and it is short of the apex. Here you can see the straight canal which opens directly to the anatomic apex, right? It coincides. This apical foramina coincides with the anatomic apex. Whereas here you can see the canal is doubly curved and the apical foramina opens to the lateral surface of the root. Coming to the isthmus. Isthmus is nothing but the communication between the two canals. A narrow ribbon shaped communication which has been present between the root canals is called as the isthmus. Coming to the classification of the isthmus which was given by the Kim et al. He says that type 1 is incomplete isthmus, faint communication between the two canals, and type 2 is complete isthmus with a definite connection between the two canals, and type 3 is complete but very short. Okay, very short isthmus between the two canals. Type 4 is complete or incomplete isthmus between the 3 or more canals. Okay, type 5 is 2 or 3 canals opening without visible connections. See, type 1 faint communication between the two canals. Type 2 complete communication which can be visible also. Type 3 is complete but it is very short only. Type 4 is communication which may be complete or incomplete between 2 or 3 canals, and type 5 is invisible. The connections are invisible, right? This is a type 5. Coming to the classifications of the root canals, first is Vartus's classification, next Wien's classification, and next classification which is based on the canal cross section. Coming to the Vartus's classification, here it has been divided into types, 8 types. Type 1 is single canal extends from the pulp chamber to the apex. Only one is to 1 from the pulp chamber to the root apex. Type 2. Two separate canals leave the pulp chamber and join short of the apex to form the one canal. 2 is to 1. This is a one canal from the floor of the pulp chamber to the root apex. And type 2 is two canals starts from the pulp chamber, which later joins together to form a single opening. Type 3 is one canal leaves the pulp chamber and divides into two lateral in the body of the root and then again unites to form a single opening. This is the type 3. Type 4 is two distinct canals from the floor of the pulp chamber to the root apex. Type 5 is one canal from the floor of the pulp chamber and gets divided into two openings, which is near to the short of the root apex. Type 6 is two canals from the floor of the pulp chamber, which later unites in the body of the root to form a single canal and then later again divides into two canals near the root apex. 2:1:2. And coming to the type 7, here the type 7 is one canal from the floor of the pulp chamber, then later again divides into two, again joins in the body of the root and then again divides into two. 1:2:1:2. Coming to the type 8, three separate distinct canals from the floor of the pulp chamber to the root apex. See, type 1 1:1, 1:1, type 2 2:1, type 3 1:2:1, type 4 2, type 5 1:2, type 6 2:1:2, type 7 1:2:1:2, type 8 3 canals. Here I made this to remember the vertex classification. First we have to write all the 8 types, type 1 to type 8. Then we have to draw the circles. Type 1 is 1 circle, type 2 is 2 circles, then next 3 circles, then again 1 circle, then again 2, 3, 4 circles, then again 1 circle. After drawing these circles, we have to write the numbers, only 1 and 2, right? See, first you have to write 1 in the type 1, then coming to the from the type 1 diagonally you write 1, and next 2 from this again diagonally 2, and next 1, and next 2 from this 2 diagonally all 2, and type 5 again 1 diagonally all 1, and type 6 is 2 and diagonally all 2, then again 1. Then lastly in the type 8 we have to remember this 3 number. That's it. In this way we can remember this vertex classification in an easier way. Guys, if you know this some other way to remember this classification, please comment in the comment box. Coming to the Wien's classification, single canal from the pulp chamber to the apex 1. Here type 2 is two canals from the pulp chamber, floor of the pulp chamber, then lateral joins to form a single canal. Type 3 is two separate canals from the floor of the pulp chamber to the root apex. Type 4 is one canal from the pulp chamber and later divides into two. See, 1:1, 2:1, 2:2, 1:2. This is the Wien's classification. Coming to the classification based on the canal cross section, it can be classified as round or circular, oval, long oval, flattened, irregular. Coming to the goals of the access cavity preparation. First of all, to achieve a straight access cavity preparation, we have to follow some of the steps, right? First of all, we have to remove all the carious tooth structure. Whatever the carious tooth structure is present, we have to remove all those things. And next we have to conserve the sound tooth structure. This is very important. Then again de-roofing. De-roofing is nothing but the removing the overhanging of the pulp chamber, roof of the pulp chamber. Removal of the coronal pulp tissue, whether it is vital or necrotic. Okay, location, we have to locate all the root canal orifices in the floor of the pulp chamber. Then again we can gain the straight line access to the root canal. These are the goals for the access cavity preparation. Coming to the clinical guidelines which we have to follow for the access cavity preparation. This has been divided into two: pre-operative considerations and clinical considerations. Before starting the procedure, we have to arrange the instruments, right? The armamentarium. For what are the instruments what we require for the access cavity preparation are mouth mirror, a rotor and the slow speed rotary hand pieces, and the burrs. Burrs what we use are nothing but the round carbide burrs number 2, 4 and 6, and diamond burrs, fissure cardboard burrs and diamond burrs with safety tips. For porcelain restorations, we use round diamond burrs. For calcified teeth, we use long shank burrs, and we use generally endodontic spoon excavators and endodontic explorers. These are the burrs. This is a diamond burr with the round cutting ends, and this is the safety tip, right? Fissure carbide burr with a safety tip. These are the explorers which has been used in the access cavity preparation. Assessment. First of all, before going into the process, we have to assess the tooth anatomy. We have to see whether there is an additional cusp or not. We have to check the size and shape of the tooth. Is there any abnormality? See, the major principle is the internal anatomy of the tooth or the pulp dictates the external outline form. As I said before, the pulp usually follows the contour of the tooth, and hence here it says that whatever the pulp which is present inside the tooth, it generally follows the contour of the, it dictates the external outline form. Okay, the size and shape of the endodontic coronal preparation relates to the size and the shape of the pulp and the chamber. Whatever the coronal preparation we do in the starting for the access cavity preparation, it tells about the size and the shape of the pulp and the chamber. Coming to the complicating factors, what are the complicating factors we generally overcome for the when we start the access cavity preparation? If there is any rotated or malpositioned tooth, tipping or the mesial tilting of the tooth, grossly decayed tooth, teeth with the full coverage restorations, abutment teeth, teeth with the extensive calcifications, these are the some of the complicating factors. Radiographic assessment. Here in the radiographic assessment, we have, before starting the procedure, we take a radiograph, right? In that radiograph, we have to assess all these features. Is there any mesodistal tilt of the tooth, and what is the size and shape of the pulp chamber and thickness of the roof of the pulp chamber? Present, is there any pulp stones and the variations of the number of the canals and the roots? Okay, and what extent of the root and the canal curvature, very important, extent of the root and the canal curvature, and is there any changes in the furcation and the periradicular region? All these we have to overcome all these factors. We have to have a look on all these factors before we start the procedure. And now coming to the clinical considerations. Clinically, first we have to remove all the carious tooth structure and other restorative material. Then again, next, complete de-roofing and the removal of the dentinal shoulders. Shoulders are nothing but the overhanging of the pulp chamber, right? Roof of the pulp chamber. We have to remove everything. Overhanging structure of the pulp chamber has to be removed completely to form a straight access cavity. Okay, present between tooth orifices will help in achieving the straight line access and improve the clinical access to the root canals. See, on a clinical note, this is a complete de-roofing of the mesial shoulder which has been taken in the mandibular molar. Okay, see, complete de-roofing. We have to clean everything. See, when we enter into the access cavity preparation, after entering into the roof of the pulp chamber, we have to go for the lateral cutting motion rather than the apical cutting motion. See, lateral cutting motion rather than the apical cutting direction after entering into the roof of the pulp chamber. This is one of the important clinical note. While we perform, this point has to be remembered while we perform the access cavity preparation. See, dentinal shoulders. In which tooth what dentinal shoulders we have to consider are maxillary anterior, palatal shoulder, mandibular anterior, lingual shoulder, premolars, mesial and the distal shoulder. In maxillary molars, buccal and mesial shoulder. In mandibular molars, mesial and the distal shoulder. Coming to the evaluation of the CEG and the root canal orifices. Here, these two scientists, Kranzer and Rancourt, determined that CEJ, cemento-enamel junction, as the most important landmark in determining the location of the pulp chambers and the root canal orifices. These two scientists gave the laws of access opening based on the CEJ as the landmark. The first law is law of centrality. It tells that the pulp is present at the center of the tooth. Law of centrality. Coming to the law of concentricity, it says that pulp usually follows the concentric external surfaces of the tooth at the level of the CEJ. Pulp usually follows the contour of the tooth, as we discussed before. This is nothing but the law of concentricity. Coming to the law of CJ, it is nothing but that the distance between the external surface of the tooth to the wall of the pulp is same. This distance will be same even at the level of the CJ. Even at the level of the CJ, this distance will be same. This is the law of CJ. Coming to the law of color change, color of the pulp chamber is usually darker than the walls. Here you can see in the image that the color is darker when compared to that of the color of the pulp chamber is darker when compared to that of the walls of the pulp, right? And hence we can identify the canal orifices. Coming to the law of symmetries, this law of symmetry 1 and 2 doesn't apply for the maxillary molars. Okay, here the symmetry 1 says that if we draw a line in a mesiodistal direction, here mesiodistal direction, if we draw a line in a mesiodistal direction, the canal orifices are equidistant. See, they are equidistantly placed from the mesiodistal direction. This is the symmetry 1. Coming to the law of symmetry 2, it says that if we draw a perpendicular line to the mesiodistal line, okay, the canal orifices are located on the same line in the center of the floor of the pulp chamber. Here, this is the law of symmetry 2. Symmetry 1 says that when we draw a line in a mesiodistal direction, the canal orifices are equidistantly placed from the mesiodistal line. Okay. Symmetry 2 says that if we draw a perpendicular line to the mesiodistal direction line, the canal orifices lie on this perpendicular line in the center of the floor of the pulp chamber. Coming to the orifice location, law of orifice location 1, it says that these root canals are present at the junction of the wall and the floor of the pulp chamber. Law of orifice location 2 says that these canal orifices are always located at the angle of the floor and the wall junction. Coming to the law of orifice location 3, it says that orifices of the root canals are located at the terminus of the root developmental fusion lines. Terminal means terminal point of the developmental fusion lines. On a clinical note, these points we have to remember so as to proceed with the access cavity preparation. See, color change codes. The enamel is usually white in color, dentin is yellow in color, floor of the pulp chamber is gray in color, very important. And next, root canal orifices is dark gray or black in color, and pulp stones is pearly white or the dark yellow in color. These 2 points has to be remembered as we perform the access cavity preparation. When we say a gray color, we can conclude that we have entered into the floor of the pulp chamber. In that way, we can easily locate the canal orifices also. This is the color change clinical guides. This is one of the important points as we proceed with the access cavity preparation. And thank you guys. And finally, I want to thank Dr. Srikanth sir for giving such an opportunity. Guys, if you like my video, please hit the like button, comment and share the video. Thank you guys, thank you so much.